Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for making time this afternoon to join us in this RSIS Distinguished Public Lecture. The topic is, as you can imagine, something very interesting. On US-China relation, how to handle Trump. I'm very impressed by this topic because I don't think anybody can handle Trump. But let us talk about it. As you have heard the Master of Ceremony, we warmly welcome Professor Xiang to this particular lecture, and more importantly, to the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University, NTU, Singapore. You have already read a lot about Professor Xiang's background, so I think I will not go through the entire background note about him, but I just want to stress 2 points. One is that he is going to talk to us about US-China relations. So he spent a lot of his lifetime and his brain power studying this topic, of US and China relations. So this is a good opportunity for all of us to refresh our individual thinking about what US-China relation is all about and how are we going to manage the different leaders on both sides of the spectrum. No one knows where will it go. Maybe Professor Xiang will give us some clue this afternoon how we can deal with the American guy, and also how we can also deal with the Chinese guy. But it is a very big challenge. Over the years, US-China technological competition has dominated the headlines. Now it's to do with semiconductors and AI. In the past, there were other things. But this current debate and doing and flowing really excite many people. Even many of my older relatives who had no time for anything technological is always asking me question, what's the next step? Is there something more than TikTok? Is there an American version that all of us in Singapore can also use? I don't have the answer. I don't know anybody has the answer. But what is important is that the relationship between US and China are very, very consequential. So all of us wish to be able to appreciate the different dynamics, and if they really have to quarrel forever, how can we avoid being hit by this quarrel between two loving couple? The important thing now is that there is a lot of uncertainty, and we in Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries in particular, are well connected both with China and USA, and we are very concerned over where the relationship between China and US will go and how will it affect our day-to-day life, especially our business and our economic well-being. So Professor Xiang Lanxin is an expert in international relations, and he will try to give us some clue over the next hour or so. I hope all of you will prepare your question ready for him. But briefly, as you can see on the earlier notice, Professor Xiang basically lives in Geneva. He teaches at the Geneva Institute of International Studies, and I was very curious about this particular acronym, IHEID. So I asked him just now, and he said this is a French version. It's not exactly Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies. the IHEID is the French name, the acronym from French. So I'm not that stupid after all. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to fit the Graduate Institute of International and Development Study into IHEID. Okay, welcome, Professor, and we look forward to you sharing us your thoughts and perhaps some idea of how to stay cool as these two big giants continue their lovers' teeth or whatever you call it. Yeah, but we must acknowledge the contribution of Niang Gongxi for RSIS intellectual and research pursuit. Thank you very much, Xiang Lanxin, for always being there to help us bring very important people, learned people to Singapore and to share their knowledge with all of us here today. So welcome, Professor Xiang. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wang, for inviting me to this distinguished event. And of course, I'm so happy to be in Singapore this time for much longer stretch. I usually come to Singapore every year. Since Shangri-La conference started, I was the original one. But then only about 3 days or so each time. So it's basically only know Shangri-La Hotel and Orchard Road. But this time they give me a great opportunity to explore Singapore. And I think also it's a great location for me here to deliver this talk about US-China relations. Let me start it with some basic concepts or my basic thesis. Generally, I think the Trump administration in the short run presents a major disturbance, disruption, not only for US-China relations, but also the entire world, not just world economy, but also many other areas, including international law, international order, and almost everything it touches. Okay, it's disturbing. But in the medium and the long run, this is my personal opinion, Trump is really a good news for China. So let me lay out my thesis from the very beginning. Okay, then I try to explain what I mean here. Okay, I think how to handle Trump. We are really handling 3 Trumps, in fact, not just one. I think the whole world are handling 3 Trumps, but for China in particular, I think we are handling Trump, the revolutionary. We have to handle Trump, the bully, and we have to handle Trump, the transactionalist, the deal maker. This is, of course, a very complicated operation when you think about how to deal with Trump, because you have to take into consideration of all 3 dimensions. Okay. Now, what do I mean about Trump as a revolutionary? Now, in his inaugural speech, Trump publicly announced, I'm starting a common sense revolution. Okay. I note that the international press or mainstream press pays almost no attention to that. Nobody make serious comment about what common sense revolution is supposed to mean. And the most commentators take it as rhetorical rather than practical talk. It's just, a nice phrase. But when you examine what Trump is talking about and how he presented his common sense revolution and how he pursued it immediately after his inauguration speech, I must say we really have to take his rhetoric on common sense revolution seriously. If not too late, he is really stick to what he is saying. This is not something we can ignore. Okay. Now, we know that Trump is somebody who never read much, so I wouldn't exaggerate to say he actually followed the American tradition. Remember the concept, common sense, coming from American Revolution, from Thomas Paine, who is one of the founding fathers of the American Revolution. And the evocation, throughout American history, the evocation of common sense as a political instrument is always there. You may think since George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, at that time, of course, common sense is extremely important for them to start an American Revolution, get rid of the British rule. Okay? All along, you think about Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan used that concept so well, so effectively. And Donald Trump started talking about common sense revolution already in his first term. So why nobody pay attention to this? Why nobody pay attention? Now here, I must say, the two themes. When you think that Trump's version of common sense relate to Thomas Paine, you at least have to recognize there are two themes that are crucially important in Trump's thinking and do what he's doing about American domestic politics as well as foreign relations. One important theme is Thomas Paine's argument that never trust elite. Don't ever trust political elite who tells you what's good for you. People, well, whatever you define, ordinary people have a collective wisdom. They know what's good for them. Okay, so this is, of course, for Trump. This is one of the most important message during his campaign. Twice in the first campaign, and also even more so in the second campaign, which began to capture, initially sounds a little remote, because American politics for a long time, since 1960s at least, dominated by what you may call a liberal democratic values, or by liberal democratic elites. Okay. So this is where you see the message coming from Thomas Paine, which was used by Trump, eventually get to the voters, particularly during this second presidential election. Okay. So that is, I think, it's a fundamental change here. Once you accept that thesis, the logic follows would be you have to overthrow the established system. Right? As you can see, Trump is trying to do almost in every dimension they try to do. For Washington, D.C., what his immediate action is so-called draining the swamp. The bureaucratic swamp. I live in Washington, D.C. for over 7-8 years. I have so many friends who are working in the government here. Almost all of them panic. What's going on here? This is for real. This is for real. Okay. And also overthrow those liberal democrat values, the system, institutions. So this is, you can have so many examples, but he is really doing that, including, see, here is also important, many Trump critics tend to criticize him saying, you're doing this kind of stuff, America is losing soft power, meaning international image. But when you think of what Trump really thinks, Trump does not give a damn about soft power. He thought people who talk about soft power, no matter if Americans or foreigners, basically rip off the United States. So you see what he is doing is get rid of Voice of America, those, I think is a relics of Cold War period propaganda machine. That's his first action, get rid of all this stuff. Okay. And the foreign aid projects as well. So this is a fundamental. Now, you agree or not, that's another issue here. You can criticize, I criticize some part of this, but it is a revolutionary move here, seriously. Okay. The second thing I think Trump also inherited, or in his way, from Thomas Paine, is the question about peace and the war. Okay. Thomas Paine is really the first, or you can say pioneer, to the idea, at that time at least, a republic system. United States, of course, is the first republic, modern republic. Republican system has a tendency of keeping peace rather than war. There is no reason for republic to go to war. We know Immanuel Kant eventually developed what political scientists called perpetual peace, but that's much later. But Thomas Paine is much earlier than Kant. Okay. So his perpetual, I think, Trump, you can see his perpetual aversion to wars, to overseas military adventures. Okay. It's reflecting that fundamental thinking that relate to what his version of common sense is all about. Okay. So for that, I think the basic framework, for me, it's actually very clear. The contour, it's not that vague. Okay. So as a revolutionary, how he deals with the foreign relations, I think at least for two things what he's trying to do. One is he believes if you want to make a peace, you have to have a strength. Okay. But the ultimate objective is not to have a war, rather than to deter whatever military action is. Okay. So this is, I think, that's very deeply rooted in his mind. The second thing, I think, for Trump dealing with foreign relations, he does not believe institutional or the normal way of conducting diplomacy is the right approach. He is obsessed with what's called the personal summit diplomacy. He believes institutions usually hinder what the real diplomacy that can solve problems, especially concerning peace and the war. Now, no matter how you criticize his approach, we have to admit, just the last few months, his approaches seem to have some effects. Okay. Well, Pakistan, India, he may have claimed too much, but still he has done something. Or Thailand, Cambodia, and some other conflicts. But even with Ukraine, remember, he is an ice-breaking move, where no other leader is able to do. Now the question, at least we might have a chance to see the light in the tunnel. Otherwise, we will end up with an endless war here. So he has enormous ambition in that sense of changing great power politics, the dynamics of great power politics. Through that approach. So this, of course, in that particular diplomatic approach, that start to converge with other major powers. I like to use the expression reverse convergence. That is China and Russia, because their decision-making system are somewhat similar to what Trump liked to do. So that makes the communication and the diplomatic interaction easier. As we can see already, his way of dealing with Xi Jinping, his way of dealing with Putin. Now, whether or not he's going to be successful or not, we have to wait and see. But somehow he was able to make a major breakthrough there. With China, certainly. I think on the issue of Taiwan, I never thought I would see that in my perhaps lifetime. There was some light in the tunnel. There may be some chance. I will explain later a little bit more detail here. I'm just giving you some framework. Now here, since I'm talking about convergence theory here, remember, for US-China relations, or the Western-China relations, it has long been dominated by a convergence theory. That theory proposed that as countries industrialize, they, usually began to converge, not just economically, but, political values and even cultural and class structure, everything start to converge. But the other side of the argument is that there's always the assumption it's only one-way convergence. The assumption is the non-Western countries inevitably will converge to Western political system and the values. Okay. That has been a dominant theme for United States government of making foreign policy. We can see under President Biden, the most obvious is the Biden administration. Okay. From the very beginning, they define great power relations, I think is a misguided definition, as democracy versus autocracy. Now, when you define great power relation that way, you're talking about conflict, really. That's the end result. Okay. Remember, this whole conversion theory also implies that Western countries have the power to impose their value upon non-Western countries. Okay. So what if one major power, like China, refused to converge, or one-way convergence? Deng Xiaoping, from the very beginning of Chinese reform, said it very, very, very clearly. But nobody seemed to remember that China needs perestroika, to paraphrase the Russian language at the time, which means economic restructuring, reform, but no glasnost of political reform according to Western value. Okay. I think Singapore former leader Lee Kuan Yew I think he is the most important spokesman for that argument. Because the convergent theory oversimplifies cultural differences, uniqueness of history, and the many, many other differences, and assuming there is a sense of, basically assume the Western system is absolutely superior. There is no rival there. Okay. Or there is no chance that Western system will somehow also change its way of doing. But now, nobody expected that only a few months in office after Donald Trump returned to the White House, we are seeing a reverse convergence that's taking place. As Trump is moving to the direction which we never seen before. Okay. 2 points with the U.S.-China relationship of this reverse convergence is important. One is I think there is a potential for the two countries to share a common sense about what you can define a regime's legitimacy is. Okay. A regime's legitimacy is not defined, this has been Chinese view, or consistent view, of US-China relations, which is characterized as being unstable for hundreds of years at least. Okay. It's like I call it a chaotic, pendulum. There is nothing to sustain a stability for US-China relationship for many, many years. Because it's swing all the time. At one point, we are the best friend. At the other point, the worst enemy. So they always swing like this. So Trump's approach, in my view, or non-ideological approach, provides a real opportunity now for China and the United States to tackle real issues. Taiwan is the #1 issue in my mind. Economic negotiation actually is a secondary, in my view. Okay. So this is, I think, the fundamental differences here between Trump administration and all the previous U.S. administration. So there is a real hope there. Now, the second thing, of course, we all know the whole world is frustrated with Trump because his erratic behavior, unpredictability. Right? I was the one advocating that Trump actually is more predictable than you think. But most people don't agree with me. I thought last year, when Trump just won the election, I was in Beijing talking to Chinese elite for the internal meeting. Thank you very much. For the internal meeting, I was the one quite isolated in the sense everybody say Trump is even going to be worse than Biden. Besides, he is so erratic, unpredictable, so it's a double whammy here. Biden's one bowl of poison, as the Chinese elite or think tank elite. We had an internal debate, it's one bowl of poison. Trump is 2 bowls of poison, so it's not going to be easy, right? My view is that not really. Okay, he is a bully, no doubt, but there is a way to find out what he might do next. Okay. Here, I want to emphasize one thing, which most of the elite, European elite, or Chinese elite, or American liberals refuse to accept is Trump was his approach, his style, his operational methods. It's unique and it's very effective and is deeply influenced by one of the American rather vulgar culture element, which is called professional wrestling. Okay. Well, you may think I'm exaggerating. No, I'm not. Think what there are. Well, first of all, just one example is he was one of his best friends, of course, is Vince McMahon, where his wife Linda is a co-chair of the Trump transition team, but also now running education secretary, education department. But that's not the issue. The issue is Trump is the one who discovered professional wrestling method to be extraordinarily important for pursuing political objectives. Okay. He is the one, I think he found a niche in American politics. His argument, of course, is very, very clear. Political game is a dirty game, but somehow politicians always want to make it look like a nice civil competition supported by mainstream media, which is always sympathetic and politically correct. Therefore, Trump invented another way, the extreme way, a really exact copy of what professional wrestling is doing. Okay? Now, what is professional wrestling? You think about this. These are the people who perform on the stage with all muscle-bound guys, painted face, wearing tights, right? Throwing each other around on stage. and using this vulgar language, extraordinarily vulgar language. But why people like it? Europeans, or European elite, or American liberal elite, they all hate it. They'll ever go there. Europeans, I heard the Europeans would say, we don't understand why Americans are so stupid. They fascinated by this kind of fake sport. Remember, professional wrestling is a fake fight, but it looks like a real. That's the secret for Trump to utilize. Okay? The concept, of course, is called kayfabe. Most people don't even know that. If you want to, you can check your dictionary. Kayfabe is representing a tacit consensus between performers and the audience that you know it's a fake fight, but you at that moment when they perform, you accept it as being a real fight. So a lie turned into a fact, right? A fake competition become a legitimate sport. But legally it cannot be legitimate sport. Okay? Therefore, WWE, the company founded by Vince McMahon and his wife, has to be called World Wrestling Entertainment. They cannot call it a sport because it's illegal to call it a sport. Nevertheless, the audience, there is a psychological bond between audience and the performers. That approach that Trump really applied to politics in such an effect, only in America, I think, probably only in the United States, you can work that way. Okay. Audience are ecstatic. Trump, usually the pattern is you have somebody jump on the stage, which here is a Trump, of course, start a long monologue, very abusive monologue, then followed by outlandish claims of whatever, lies or correct or not, doesn't matter, okay? As long as you can arouse the audience enthusiasm. Remember, professional wrestling approach helped Trump wrestle twice into the White House. So it's not something you can. Besides, there is another very important function for the Trump approach that is pretty much undermined mainstream media. American mainstream media used to be called the fourth power, along with the other three. Fact-checking, see, it's the most damaging rules if you're telling lies during the campaign. But with Trump's style of campaign, telling lies all the time, there is the fact-checking losing its role, in fact. You see how quickly it declined even now, the CNN and the many other mainstream. So Trump succeeded in many ways in this case. Okay. Here I'm talking about American domestic violence because not very many people pay attention to this. But if you're really interested, I strongly recommend a new book, actually called Vince McMahon and the Unmaking of America. Really, the professional wrestling unmade United States in that sense. Now, how that relate to U.S.-China relations? See, so here we're talking about it, right? Because Trump's operational style, the pattern, actually is traceable. Okay? Usually started with a high-handed, outrageous demand. Sometimes it almost sounds like a crazy. Then he began to, if you blinked, he will add more. If you refuse to blink, then he will come down bit by bit. The whole idea that Trump's performance is keep your rival constantly psychologically out of balance. At the same time, never really destroy the chance for negotiations. So if you know that, I think it's not too difficult. Chinese, for example, refused to blink the first month after the so-called Liberation Day. I was in Shanghai. This is Liberation Day. A few days later, he announced I was in Shanghai giving a speech. I said, give him less than 3 months. Nobody believed me, by the way. He's talking about 100, 180 with China. I say cannot be done. I end up with only 1 month. He blinked, right? So there's a very, I think his bully behavior, Chinese government probably had the best experience dealing with bully behavior, because we had no country had the longest negotiation or serious detailed negotiation about trade relations with Trump than the Chinese during the first term. Remember how long we had the negotiation there, how hard? We actually reached the phase 1 agreement. If without the COVID, we know COVID eventually destroyed everything. Then you have China hawks, I'm talking ideological hawks, who utilize or take advantage of Trump's anger about the COVID, because he loses support because he's mishandling COVID. He starts blaming China in a reckless way, even using racial language. Remember, he called China Kung flu. That's what he says, right? Kung flu. A very racist argument here. So I think what's interesting about Trump's approach is that China knows how to negotiate, and China knows how not to push the button, because he's erratic behavior. This is a guy, sometimes just you push one wrong button, he will off, the handle. So far, so good. I think Chinese, this time, the second Trump administration, Chinese seem to be quite patient. They had a very good grasp what's coming next in negotiations. The real issue, of course, is how they're going to make that deal, the real deal between the two countries. Okay. So here I want to say, the third point I want to say is how do you actually make a deal with him? What kind of a deal you think China and the United States can make? Now, Trump himself always said, with China, he said, I need a grand bargain. He never only just talked about trade. And we know, as a transactionist or typical transaction type, anything can be the card for him to play. So in that sense, that also provides more opportunities for China to tackle the most difficult, let's say, geopolitical issues with the United States, which been there for such a long time. Okay. That it's just getting worse and worse. Here, I'm talking about Taiwan question. Since Kissinger time, there is a unwritten rules, so-called strategic ambiguity. That is the argument saying United States will never show their cards if China, launch a military operation. United States always reserve the rights to react. Okay. This is, of course, written in Shanghai Communique and many other. Now, here the important part of this strategic ambiguity is actually served quite effectively a double deterrence. One's deterring Beijing, but the other side also deterred Taipei, the independence movement. Okay. So that's why it worked for more than 40 years. So when Biden administration publicly abandoned strategic ambiguity, everybody panicked, of course. I think many Americans who understand this also panicked. Because that would be the only thing that sustained Taiwan Strait military stability. It's being taken away. Okay. Biden mentioned first time, everybody says it's a tongue slip, mistake. You have Jake Sullivan walk it back. Then second time, a fourth time, eventually he said fourth time. So that fully, Beijing, of course, is quite convinced this is what they really intend to do, saying we are committed. In other words, Biden's willing to show the cards of defending Taiwan, no matter what. Okay. So that is a war talking from a Chinese point of view. Okay. So it's extremely dangerous of doing this reckless action. Okay. Then, thank God, Trump comes back. You see, the first day, if you follow Trump, actually the first day he already said, when he's asked, how about Taiwan? Are you going to commit to defend Taiwan? Trump, very quick reaction. I will never, I quote him, I will never put myself in the position to answer that question. So, return to this strategic ambiguity. I'm sure he is very much influenced by the person who invented strategic ambiguity. He's one of the best friends of Henry Kissinger. Okay? It's, after all, that concept it's a genius invention inserted into Shanghai Communique. The first joint communique was invented by Henry Kissinger. At the time, Zhou Enlai and Nixon, for 3 days in Shanghai, negotiate on one issue, Taiwan, that failed to achieve. So, I think Trump understands strategic ambiguity so well. So he very clearly returned to strategic ambiguity. So now, what are we going to have with the actual deal over Taiwan? My sense is there is a real chance, okay, instead of playing word charade for decades since then. Remember, the US-China over Taiwan is like a play charade all the time. Now, for great power to play charade, word charade, is too dangerous. China called one China principle. I'm sure you are tired of hearing this. Americans say, no, we are pursuing one China policy. Are they talking for the same thing? Of course not. Okay. But then they began to accuse each other. You violated one China principle. Americans say we never accept one China principle. Then the Americans say you, meaning China's military exercise and doing all these things in Taiwan Strait or pressuring Taiwan leadership, you are the one who changed one China policy. Now, what's the difference here? Policy is something can be changed all the time. But Chinese want is a principle, which means that cannot be changed. But can they really somehow meeting in the middle? This is my view. They find a solution. Can we do a fourth communique? We had 3 joint communique so far, managed to maintain, but it's no longer valid. Can we do a fourth one under President Trump? Which means meeting in the middle, both sides clarify in that document each side's red line and which area they can collaborate. For me, I would say China's demand is not too complicated. United States publicly say we oppose Taiwan independence. United States so far hasn't done it. United States language, here again the word charade, we do not support Taiwan independence. Now, the following logic would be, what if Taiwan, they want independence? So we cannot stop them, right? We cannot stop a democracy. Biden people, even worse, they directly equate Ukraine with Taiwan. Basically, that's why Biden's saying, I'm going to defend Taiwan. Because today is Ukraine, tomorrow is Taiwan. But these two things has zero common element together. The Taiwan issue is a totally different issue here. It's a result of Chinese civil war. Civil war has not really ended, legally speaking. We haven't assigned anything between the two sides. So they deliberately confuse, because Taiwan is democracy, therefore we must defend. That's too dangerous, too risky. Okay. So in that sense, I personally, I do believe James Steinberg's original, let me conclude by saying, I'm going back to James Steinberg under the Deputy Secretary under Clinton. He proposed something called strategic reassurance concept, which was laughed off at that time. People don't take it seriously, but I think there is a need to look at what James Steinberg and Michael O. Hanlon of the Brookings Institution, they wrote a book about strategic reassurance. Strategic reassurance proposed that each side can, deter each other, that's for sure. But at the same time, you acknowledge the other side's red line. Okay, we respect your red line, you respect my red line. Therefore, the risk of going into a war will be, reduced drastically. Okay, this is what I'm saying. The fourth communique should come in, following Steinberg principle of strategic reassurance. Okay, so this is, I think, my feeling is that I haven't talked about some detailed trade relation tech because I leave these for the question. I only give you a broad framework, what I think it might happen. So I think the Xi Jinping and the Trump last telephone call, so much in that telephone call, as far as I know. Compare with the telephone call between Biden and Xi Jinping. It's totally different in nature. Okay, there are a lot of things they discussed, and there is a possibility they're going to have a major breakthrough in Seoul when they are meeting there for the APEC. I think I stop here. Thank you very much for listening to my lengthy interpretation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Xiang. Professor Xiang will now take questions with Ambassador Ong as the moderator. Gentlemen, please.
Thank you, Azid. Okay, this is an important hour of the English dictionary here. Yeah, strategic policy, strategic principle, strategic reassurance. These are the last sets of words here. But earlier on, I've heard what Professor Xiang talked about Trump as a bully. I like this idea of WWE. I actually enjoy it. Most surprisingly, I enjoyed that program when I was posted to Saudi Arabia. Yeah, when I was working there as Singapore's representative in Saudi Arabia, women couldn't drive and everything had to be covered up if you are a feminine person. Yeah, and yet the most happy hour of X-rated entertainment would be the WWE, because all these wrestlers will be almost naked. Yeah, my first encounter with the religious policeman in Saudi Arabia was I went for my jog second morning after I arrived in Saudi Arabia, and I was stopped by some Saudi men in the traditional costume, and I was told that I cannot run around my compound. It is a part of the compound, it's a gated community. I couldn't run around in my shorts. I had to wear the long tracksuit. So I said, look at me, I'm a guy, you know. Say, yeah, that's why you're so much more attractive than the women. That was the answer they gave me. Yeah, that was 1984. Yeah, okay. After that, my wife was the most ardent policewoman, making sure that everywhere I go for so-called physical fitness exercises, I must wear a long-sleeved shirt with a long pants, because she said you can get really worked up by people, you know, if you run in your shorts as you do in Singapore. And in Singapore, Professor, sometimes you see men running only with one pair of shorts on them. They run bare body. That is going to be a terrible danger in places where I just said about. Okay, so now the hour is for you, members of the audience. Questions, comments, objection to what Professor Xiang has said, or you support him, or whatever. Anybody you like to go? Whoa, where? Microphone, please. Only two things, give us your name and where you come from, that's all. Make a question short, please.
Thank you, Professor Xiang. Fantastic speech. I thought you were spot on, particularly with the WWE reference. Very good call on that. I want to pick up where you left off. Very interesting contrast between Trump's discussion Xi Jinping's discussion with Trump and his discussion with Biden. And you said the fundamentally different nature. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that, and what do you expect? I think perhaps a grand bargain will be too premature at this point, but what do you expect from the meeting in Seoul?
Right. Well, the fundamental difference is obvious. It's about ideology. Okay. Now, great power relations cannot be conducted by ideology, not even during the Cold War. You base your policy making on ideological thinking or ideological framework. Okay? Because remember, when you think about Chinese PRC's national interests, what is the key for China to deal with foreign countries or the foreign relations, or what's the threat, number one threat to their core interest? It's not even Taiwan or other territorial issues. It's the challenge to its legitimacy. Okay? So when you're thinking in ideological terms, it's almost automatic. You delegitimize the regime. Okay? Remember Biden loved this idea of democracy. He actually had several rounds of a summit of democracy. It's almost, to me, it's almost absurd. It's very bad, not even successful, those terrible events. And Singapore is excluded just for the way they're thinking. It's almost absurd, in my view. Okay. So this is where I think it's almost impossible for real dialogue, not to mention negotiations, when you're dealing with the other side who's thinking in such a high moral ground. Remember the Anchorage, the first high-level meeting when Biden came to power. It turns out a shouting, exchange. American side, I must say, their performance is so superior. They are, teaching Chinese a lesson or something like that. Chinese respond as we know. The rest of it. So here, I think, therefore, with Biden, for 3 years, China and the United States, they almost stopped senior level communications. It's so dangerous for me to even think back when you stop communication. So here, I think, is what the problem. Democratic Party, I think they haven't learned the lesson yet. Yeah.
Okay. You can think about it and ask a follow-up later.
Right.
Yes. Your name and your background, please. Yes, sir. Microphone coming behind you.
In fact, my name is Xiang Lanxin, former Executive Director, American Chamber of Commerce in Bangladesh. In fact, I have to attend a program at the American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, but my son, Gafur Samin, he was very much interested to attend this program. So I said that let us make a deal. Let us both together attend this program, then go to American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore program. My question is this about unpredictability. What I can see in President Trump is that he's predictable to be unpredictable. And one of the things, he became the global icon of discussion because of his introduction of reciprocal tariff globally. And the whole world is talking about it. Still, we don't know where we are moving. I would like to ask you the question, where is the end of this reciprocal tariff globally? Thank you.
I know the reciprocal tariff.
I'm not yes.
How do you see the?
Yeah, reciprocal tariff by
How you see it?
tariff, reciprocal tariff.
Because,
Yeah.
He said how. Oh, the reciprocal tariff. Well, remember with China, you're talking about the global or you're talking about the global? Well, from a Chinese point of view, but I can only say from Chinese point of view, it's fortunate that he actually launched a global trade war, because the last term, if you recall, the only focus is on China. Okay, so it's quite interesting to see medium power who depend so much, including Europeans or maybe Southeast Asian, and they have to suck up to Trump because the stake is too high. So they have to do a lot of concessions. You have Qatar even giving him an airplane. Everybody's trying to. There is a flattery culture is born in Europe as well. You have a von der Leyen praise him. You have a NATO Secretary General call him daddy. It's all sounds pathetic, but the whole point is that China actually feel there is no, since we are not alone this time, so we will try to do is to take the advantage of opening more markets when those countries fail to access the U.S. market. So they are actually provide China with more advantage here. Here I'm again talking about from Chinese point of view. Latin America being the main area, but I guess also other area as well, including Europeans. Trump tried to force Europeans to tariff China for the oil from Russia. Europeans says no, right? Basically, we cannot accept this. So China is in the, I would say, advantageous position with this global trade war. But you ask me when it's going to end? Nobody knows, really. Because Trump is calculate each, if you blink, he will push more. It's typical, this is a real estate capitalist at work. It's not other type of, that's what the real estate bargaining type style. Yeah. So I guess if EU really united, willing to fight, Trump probably has to make some concession. That's my view, yes.
Yeah.
Even China.
Sorry?
Even China also.
China preferred to team up with the EU, but the EU refused because, see, they are thinking of the ideological thing. They say China, the biggest problem between China and EU today is China refusal to call Russian invasion condemn the war in Ukraine. This is the number one obstacle now. So, yes.
Yes, hold on. There's one guy at the back. Yes, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, President Xiang. My name is Dipinder Randhawa. Sorry. I'm with RSIS. You drew a very interesting parallel with Thomas Paine,
Yes.
who had the makings of a statesman and a philosopher. He visualized America as a dynamic economy with stable institutions. The separation, as you pointed out, of the executive branch, the judiciary, and the legislature.
Right.
If I may take the liberty of putting a counter proposal, and that's The Art of the Deal, Trump's book from the 80s, and he's invoked that frequently. And the basic thesis in The Art of the Deal is his experiences as a real estate magnate, replete with very often with very dodgy dealings. The main underpinnings of that is he sees everything as a zero-sum game.
Right.
And for a real estate magnate is to start off with impossible demands, understand where your opponent will bottom out in a sense, and
Sure.
how far she or he will let you go. And so on and so forth. So there's no dynamic perspective or reflection on what your consequences will generate, subsequent consequences and third tier and so on and so forth, and how they may be contrary to your own broader interest. Could you share your thoughts on, I mean, I could carry on, but I hope I've conveyed the gist. Could you share your thoughts on that perspective and to what extent it helps us glean an understanding of what's going on and what the end point may be, if there's one at all, one can discern, especially the zero-sum game part.
But your question is what?
You invoked Thomas Paine, and my
Yes.
question is, to what extent can we understand the man through his writings and the art?
Through Trump's writing, as to
Yes.
Thomas Paine.
And that seems to have informed a lot of the decision-making, including his attitude towards strong leaders as well. Thank you.
Yeah, well, he is owner of a business, so he has to be a strong leader. There is no question about that. As I said, his style is he has a mixed, background. Remember, I emphasize his professional wrestling background. He is the only president who is a Hall of Famer of a professional wrestling. So that's what he learned, the technique, even for his negotiation style. He loved this kind of performance since he was 7. He really don't like other sports except golf. Golf is for, different reasons. Business, dealing, wheeling, and the dealing. But he always fascinated by those kind of approach. Truth, lie, fake, not, because he's the one interested in making smash through the wall that's separating truth and the lies. Once he made to that position, you don't know what he's talking about. Therefore, you will be psychologically unstable. He will in control. This is what I think his negotiation style is very deeply rooted by several, reasons. But professional wrestling has an impact on him enormously.
He's actually put on the Hall of Fame of the Association of Professional Wrestlers.
Yes, he is.
Well, in his wrestling costume or in his fully clothed?
He is wearing the
his coat and tie, yeah. All right.
It's incredible, yes.
Okay, young man here. Front row. Microphone, please.
Yes.
Question?
Hi, thanks, Professor. My name is Shantanu. I'm a PhD student at RSIS.
Yes.
My question is, before this month, China's stance on the TikTok issue was firmly resistant to US demands, and it was viewed as an infringement on its sovereignty and was seen as technological coercion. So from China's perspective, what has now changed, and what insights can we draw on China's negotiation strategy since the recent phone call with Xi and
You mean
Trump?
China negotiation strategy vis-a-vis Trump, or are you talking about
TikTok.
Yes,
TikTok issue?
With Trump, but
Well,
with regard to their
yes,
changing stance
okay,
on the
yeah.
TikTok issue.
Yeah. Well, TikTok issue, as you know, it's China uses very good card here. You see, the Chinese make a lot of concessions, step by step. Chinese began to say, okay, at the beginning said, no, we'll never approve this. Because TikTok is not entirely in Chinese government control. You have to understand this. Secondly, the issue is the mathematic part, model. That is how much control you will lose there. So my view is that the founder of this, in China it's called Byte, no, it's a different company. He actually has several other sets of the mathematical models. He could, working on some different version as well in the future. So it's not entirely, but since Trump is so much obsessed with this, not just for American politics, but also, you see, Trump, I'm sure there is a personal interest here. Trump is the first president in my memory who never separated personal gain. I'm talking about family gain, right? Not him himself, but the family. Financial gain, like a cryptocurrency, all these things. They're doing it publicly, not even hiding what they're doing. So there is enormous private interest, in my view, behind it, perhaps. Okay? So therefore, he want to push it. Now, from a Chinese point of view, okay, we understand this, so we are willing to make a deal here. Because you really want this, you have to give us something else. So here, I don't know if you noticed the last telephone call. They say we only talk about TikTok. Of course not. Right? Some other issues also mentioned, but never reported. That's what I thought. Yeah. So it's a bargaining chip. So China also learned we need a bargaining chip as well. Yeah. Yes.
The lady behind. I come to you.
Kirsten Conrad, member of the general public. If Trump is transactional, he's going to want something from China in return for fourth communique.
Sure.
In your view, Professor Xiang, what will China dangle in front of Trump?
Well, again, it's my personal view. I wouldn't say I have persuaded Chinese policymakers entirely, but I have been promoting this for several years, right? So increasingly become more acceptable than that. It's not too complicated. If United States change its language, as I said, change language from do not support Taiwan independence to oppose, okay? China should, in my view, pledge, under that circumstances, there is no need for China to use military option here, okay? So in that case, we create a kind of symbiotic system. Yeah. If Taiwan leader really make a last dash toward independence, the United States will be obligatoire, no, that's French, obligatory, sorry, French, to work with China within just a few hours to stop that trend, let's say. So that makes China feel secure. There's independence will never happen. No, that is a psychological thing here. Okay. I don't really believe the Chinese have, military operations the first choice. It's almost nonsense. The U.S. government create all these, predictions. You know that the Air Force people say 2025 China's going to attack. CIA say 2027. Then you have others saying maybe 2030. Where they get all this nonsense, they can make that deadline. The Chinese going to launch attack. It's almost absurd. It's totally invented. Yes. So that's what I hope the fourth communique really means. That's what strategic reassurance really means. Really. Yes.
So you don't think there will be a potential war over Taiwan between China and USA?
Unilateral. I'm talking about without other major incidents like the Nancy Pelosi event or that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Trump will not do that. Okay.
Yeah, he said he doesn't like war.
And he will not do provocative actions.
Okay.
Trump just suspended the arms to Taiwan just a few days ago, as you see. Never happened before. You see, all these things are new here.
Yeah. My mother-in-law used to say that the kind of guy would talk big in front of his mother, but will not be in front of the mother-in-law. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So you got your answer, young lady over there. Okay. Next, somebody here. Yes, Ifan.
Thank you, Professor. I'm Patrick. I'm a PhD student at NTU. Your framework is very interesting, and I'm wondering if you could look ahead a little bit. And do you see Trump's moves as a new foundation for U.S. foreign policy making, or do you think that might get walked back with the next election cycle?
Well, my own view is this. Trump legacy, well, here it's important, and let me emphasize again, he does not, what Trump doesn't like. He doesn't like the ideology, okay? He doesn't like allies. he doesn't like a war, okay? All three things from a Chinese point of view, it's, I mean, we never thought we will see that, right? He is laying a foundation of a major geostrategic retrenchment or rearrangement of international order, of security order. He is returning to America, continent basically, frontier defense. If you follow the story of the Pentagon's, the first, the National Defense Strategy, leaked, well, some say it's leaked, but draft, which is at the table of Mr. Hegseth. China threat become a secondary issue, which if you compare with Biden's national defense strategy, is totally different. For Biden, China is the number one, they call pacing threat, and also it's an incurable ideological foe, right? Biden people also think China is promoting its own model, Chinese model, to compete or destroy American capitalist model. It's almost absurd. That it's never really. Then you have a Trump who's, saying why we need alliance. Okay. Think about NATO. I think, after Cold War, why the world needs a standing, ready, fully fledged military alliance. Nobody thought about it. The only reason they can argue is we are the good people. So why you need so Putin never agreed with this. Or Putin, you can say, he never accept that logic. We dismantled our Warsaw Pact. Therefore, your alliance, Cold War legacy continues. So what is the mutual balance? the classic concept, international security. You need a balance of power here. Okay? So this is where I think. So Trump's legacy will last, in my view. That's my feeling, yes.
At the back, Ariel, yeah?
Thank you, Prof. I'm Ariel from RSIS. Would you therefore, would I be right to conclude that Trump has been a positive for China's peaceful rise? Would you think that that would be your overall assessment at the end of Trump's term? Secondly, could we have some picture of China's growing economic and political role on the world stage in the next 5 to 10 years? Thank you.
Peaceful rise. I mean, this is invented by Chinese during Hu Jintao period, and that concept lasts probably 5 or 6 months, I would say.
Too short.
Yes, actually. I mean, if you can look at my long essay published in Washington Post attacking that concept. I think logically it's a stupid concept. Practically, it's never going to work. Nobody believes a peaceful rise, which makes the Hu Jintao people not very happy, because Hu Jintao just arrived in Washington. First thing he has to do is read my commentary in Washington Post. It's a long half page.
Are you allowed to go back to China?
Sorry?
Are you allowed to go back to China?
I'm actually, I'm a Chinese citizen. I have a lot of friends with Chinese, but I also, as a scholar in Switzerland, I criticize if I think they are wrong. But I'm not attacking, you know. I'm not, I criticize in the logic, try to say there's something wrong with this peaceful rise, because it doesn't work. Okay. So that is my answer to the first. It makes no sense even to link Trump to peaceful rise as a concept. Okay. The second question is too long to answer. What is the role of Chinese economic, political role? But China is going to play increasingly more important role during the Trump period, because Trump's reputation is down, even though he doesn't really care that much about soft power. But certainly, remember a few years ago, every accusations piled upon China, disturbing international economy, what is called political repression and international security, disturbing international peace. All these things now can come back to Trump himself, who's supposed to be leader of the Western world. Right? So what's wrong for China to compare with Trump? That's what I'm saying is a reverse convergence. Right? Really, it's a convergence there. So, right?
Yeah, a back row there. Is it Liang Fok?
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. Professor Xiang, you made 2 points which I find very illuminating, but also concerning at the same time. One is that you talk about if you want peace, you need to have the strength. And Trump is also obsessed with personal summit diplomacy. I think these 2 points from the perspective of China is very close, because you see the September 3 celebration, it is also about peace through strength. And then President Xi Jinping also emphasizes leaders' diplomacy. So I fully agree with you that these 2 countries will be able to reach some form of agreement down the road. The 2 areas that I somehow disagree is that on Ukraine issue, because Putin seems, because to assume that 2 countries reach an agreement, you would, at this juncture, China is keen to reach an agreement with the US. Whereas Putin, it seems to me, is not so keen. That's why it seems to me that he has widened the conflict in a sense, in terms of drone invasion in Romania and Poland, as well as the latest one over Estonia. So that part, I'm a bit mixed on that issue. The other question is, the other concerning part to me is that you talk about a grand bargain. Grand bargain suggests that decisions at the end of the day will be made by the big powers. So from a small country like Singapore, and you look at the big powers striking a grand bargain, then it suggests that we are at the mercy of the big powers. So my question to you is, how do you, or how would you advise the smaller countries? What can they do under such a situation? Thank you.
Well, yes, of course. It's a big power politics. But remember this, the Singapore, or Mr. Lee Kuan Yew used to say, the nightmare for us is 2 elephants, start fighting. We little animal on on the ground will be always tramped on, right? So we are in real trouble. I recall one of the Shangri-La dialogue, I was at the dinner, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong also mentioned that. That's a few years ago. I'll try to remember. I was the one at Rice's question. I said, what if the 2 elephants making love? That will mess up the ground as well, right? So it's not just the fighting. So here I would say, on the whole, I think what Trump really wants, which I think you have to appreciate, he'd like to have a grand revival of the Cold War period, grand triangular, what's called geostrategic triangle relationship. Moscow, Beijing, and Washington, with Washington, of course, manipulating the 2 sides. Remember the most recent logic in Washington is say, why Trump is so nice to Chinese? Because they say they want to peel Russia, China, peel Russian off China, as they say. Therefore, the meeting with Putin has the idea of driving a wedge between China and Russia. This is also known in Washington as called the reverse Nixon strategy. Because Nixon in 1972, that move, the rapprochement, actually peeled China off Russia at that point. Trump is a firm believer, I think it's, again, Kissinger's influence. The Kissinger inventors. That is, if these three powers can be controlled or manageable, say, there will be no war. The other power, Europeans, forget about Europe. Europeans are hopeless anyway. That's what I say. Japan, South Korea, look at his language. About India, you see, Biden people put India in such a high position because Indo-Pacific, all the blah, blah, blah. Suddenly Trump says, I don't care, right? So this is what his focus. He wants to create a new geostrategic triangle. Whether he can make it or not, we don't know yet. But the number one priority for him is to end the war. China too. China is very keen on ending that war. So Putin so far has, playing more games right now. But that, at least from Trump's point of view, that is a real guarantee of global peace, or at least avoid World War III. It's to have that triangular relationship under American influence, if not control. Yes. Yeah.
So on that note, Trump and Putin, basically just playing for time. They are not going to really find a way to resolve the Ukraine war or other issues that divide Russia from the rest of the world. They just, it's back to the professional wrestling.
I be honest, I really, I think Trump has a special relationship with Putin. His relation with Xi Jinping is more, I would say, business-like. With Putin, it's really personal. That's my view. As I said, I saw Putin personally twice a year. Well, in one room. So I listened to Putin many, many times, close distance. Putin has something, I think, that attracts Trump to the extent that Xi Jinping never has. The way Putin thinks, the way Putin argues, the way Putin manipulates things. My sense is Putin eventually will come down. Right now, because he is in such a military advantage on the ground. But Putin also wants to end the war. But he wants to gain whatever he can have militarily. But eventually he will. That's my view. He will not let Trump down forever. That's my view.
Yeah. Well, all professional wrestlers each have their $1 million at the end of the game. At the end of match. This side, no one, any questions from here? Last shot before we close. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, wait, hold on. This guy, who's that gentleman there? Let me take his question and come back to you, okay?
Yeah. My name is Bill Liu. I'm an incubator of startup companies. I know this session is about US, China, and how to manage Trump. I wonder whether I can ask a divergent question about the war in Israel and Gaza. Whether, Prof, you have any views of how Trump, looks at this and how it can be resolved. Thank you.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
Well, I think it's not good for Trump or for the United States in general, the Gaza event. It's a major disaster, I think. Personally, I believe that Trump is also frustrated with Netanyahu. Netanyahu is somebody completely out of control. So I don't know. Even Chinese got angry with that. Remember, China used to have a good relation with Middle Eastern countries. we have zero rivals in Middle East. China, this is the only region China has, everybody's supposed to be a friend. But China also began to talk quite tough on Netanyahu. So I don't know. It all depends on how Netanyahu is going to behave. Because nobody can control him. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
one last question from this man with the cap.
Sorry, I asked the first question. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Niall. I'm an editor with the Asia Times. Here in a personal capacity today, but my question is actually sort of in line with the Gaza thing. So we've seen Israel commit genocide in Gaza. Trump talks about being pro-peace. He goes and bombs Iran with Israel's support. He receives a plane from Qatar, and he lets Israel bomb Doha. I mean, why is Trump, he can be so aggressive with allies, he can show strength, but he never pushes back against Netanyahu or Israel. Why do you think that is?
Well, my sense is that U.S. politics is incredible. Even Trump admits the Jewish lobby is the #1 lobby. He publicly says so. Charlie Kirk, the last day of his life, actually broke with Trump over that. So it's not something Trump is unaware of, that he cannot really influence Netanyahu. So, but on the other hand, he cannot really break with Netanyahu. So that's my thinking is, it's a catch-22, really, for Trump. He's not happy with what Netanyahu is doing. That's my view. Yeah.
Maybe talk a bit about Charlie Kirk, the last, when he broke with Trump. What happened? Many of our audience may not be aware.
Yes, no, I think he, just last few months or so, he publicly criticized Netanyahu. He basically saying, the Jewish lobby basically control the government. He said so. And then he was persuaded, don't make it a big deal. But so he's really, really angry with Trump administration. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Donald Trump is not having it easy, because when this idea of accusation that he is very friendly towards Israel's position, it might roll out a lot of other issues. But today we talk about China and Trump. So your conclusion is that Trump is manageable.
From Chinese point of view,
From Chinese point of view, yeah. But we haven't seen all the act from the China side yet. Maybe there are a few more cards in their bag. Yeah. Right. What can they do anymore? One last shot, Professor. What China can do, apart from all these tariff and trade and other issues? You think they will eventually, they means Xi Jinping and Trump, come to some kind of quid pro quo?
Well, trade issue, as I said, is not the #1 issue, really, because the tariff rate is already set. They already reduced quite a bit already. And the Chinese, this time, I must say, I would say, tacitly agree with the US on one thing, that is excessive the trade surplus with any country is not good news. Not just you create a resistance from that country, but it's not really good for Chinese economy either, because they're out of balance here. The two heavily rely upon exporting industry. As we know, Chinese economy itself is in trouble. So that's the effect of we overly rely upon external trade relationship. So it is, Trump provides an opportunity for China to do more adjustment as well. So this is what I think the trend is, it's not going to be a negative trend, even the economic side. For the tech war already toned down, as you know, with the chips, for example. They say, oh, we need China market because we can sell. Then Chinese say, no, we don't need your low level. We want more. So this is a bargaining process going on there as well. So Jensen Huang has to get the government approval, saying maybe another round of setting.
Okay, I think we have troubled you more than enough for now. I think you have given us a lot of food for thought. Yeah, but I'm going to go back and watch my WWE again. Yeah. You know, my wife never allowed me to turn on the program.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I always enjoy it because it's fun to see how they choreograph the wrestling on the in the ring, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Professor Xiang, and on behalf of all my friends here, thank you, and we take home some of your ideas, and we will think about how we see China and US going forward. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.